Tucked away in the green hills of Albany, Vermont, there is this magnificent old brick mansion. And it looks like a place of immense pride, but it's also the backdrop for a wild story of ambition, betrayal, and a really dark prophecy that haunted one family for over 100 years. This is the story of the Hayden family curse.
So these are the chilling words that kicked the whole thing off. Imagine this. They were spoken on a deathbed way back in 1806 by a woman who felt she'd been completely betrayed. And this curse, it would just hang over the Hayden family, almost like it was guiding their fate for the next 120 years. And right here, this is the stage where the whole tragedy would unfold. This huge, grand mansion was built when the family was at the absolute peak of its power, and it would end up becoming a silent witness to their incredible rise and their prophesied devastating fall.
Okay, so a curse this specific doesn't just pop out of nowhere, right? To really get it, we've got to go back to the beginning. A story about big dreams, a lot of borrowed money, and one very bitter betrayal. It all starts with the family patriarch, a guy named William Hayden Sr. He had these huge ambitions, but his vision, well, it was funded by loan after loan from his mother-in-law, Mercy Dale. He used her cash to build up his businesses and live this really lavish lifestyle. But there was just one huge problem. He never paid her back. Not a dime.
So, as Mercy got older and sicker, her suspicion just festered. It turned into this dark certainty in her mind that William was actually poisoning her to get out of paying his debts. So with her dying breath, she unleashes this prophecy. Her rage was so total, she even refused to be buried in the Hayden family plot. She wanted nothing to do with them, even in death. You'd think a curse like that would spook someone, but for a while, it really seemed like they were just bitter words. The next generation, led by William Hayden Jr., was basically determined to build a legacy so grand it would completely silence any prophecy of ruin. And for a time, they were successful. William Will Hayden Jr. turned out to be this brilliant railroad contractor. We're talking building hundreds of miles of track and making an incredible fortune. By 1854, he was ready to build a monument to that success. A home that would basically spit in the face of any curse. And what a monument it was. This was not your average farmhouse. Get this, 18-inch thick brick walls, massive granite doorways that had to be hauled in by ox cart, velvet draperies, crystal chandeliers. It was an unbelievably grand statement for the middle of rural Vermont.
But the real heart of the mansion, its social center, was the ballroom on the third floor. It had this incredible spring-suspended floor, which was designed to gently bounce while people danced on it. The New Year's Eve parties they threw up there became the absolute stuff of local legend.
It honestly sounds like something out of a fairy tale. While all the guests are dancing, Will's wife, Azuba, would be playing these beautiful melodies on the piano, and she did it all by ear. She never had a formal lesson in her life. For the Haydens, it must have felt like the future was totally bright, completely secure. But Mercy Dale's prophecy was just waiting there, patiently, in the shadow. That perfect picture the family had built was about to crack as tragedy and just plain bad luck started to line up perfectly with that century-old curse. So let's just lay it all out. This timeline shows you the whole 100-year arc. It starts with Mercy's words in 1806. Then you have the mansion's completion in 54. That's the absolute peak of the family's pride. But then, the fall begins. By 1910, the heir from the second generation is penniless. And by 1927, the prophecy is complete, down to the very last detail. So how did it happen? Well, the downfall really started with Will Jr.'s only surviving son, Henry, who was apparently pretty erratic and unreliable. He inherits the whole estate and, just like his grandfather, lives way beyond his means. Then, the absolute worst tragedy strikes. His only son, the boy who was the third generation, dies when he's just 5 years old. And with him, the family's future basically dies too. The money disappeared, and that grand mansion was just left empty.
Okay, so the male line is gone. The fortune is gone. There was only one part of Mercy Dale's prophecy left to come true: the fate of the very last person to carry the Hayden name.
The mansion itself really tells the whole story. On the left, you see it in its prime, a symbol of just boundless optimism. And then on the right, a much sadder view, a landmark that holds the memory of a family's incredible rise and its equally incredible prophesied collapse.
And this is Armenia Mamie Hayden. As the last of her line, she didn't inherit a fortune. Nope, she inherited debt. That's it.
Forced to leave her home, she ended up dying alone and completely broken in 1927. The Hayden name died with her. And that final, chilling part of Mercy's curse, the last to bear the name shall die in poverty, was fulfilled. But the family story didn't really end with them. It became a legacy that was almost imprinted on the house itself. After the Haydens were gone, the mansion took on a whole new life, as one of Vermont's most famous haunted houses, as if the echoes of that curse were trapped inside its walls. And, people still argue about this today. Back in 1976, a family descendant, Dwight Dow, just brushed it all off as nonsense. Ghosts? Hell no, he said. But then you have Helen Stacy, who actually lived there in the 50s, and she told a very different story. She said everybody in town knew there was something different about that house, and most people were just too scared to stay there. And these aren't just vague feelings we're talking about. The stories are specific and super eerie. People reported hearing phantom waltz music drifting down from that third-floor ballroom. 2 different people at completely different times saw an apparition of a man in Lincoln-era clothes who would just vanish. There were even stories about mysterious fires that would seem to just start on their own. So all of this leaves us with the big, lingering question, right? What do we make of all this? Was this a genuine supernatural curse that had the power to shape a family's destiny for generations? Or did the very idea of the curse create a self-fulfilling prophecy, this psychological shadow that the family just could never escape? Or could it all just be a remarkable, tragic string of bad luck and bad decisions? Today, the Hayden family plot still stands in the village cemetery, a silent testament to their whole story. These impressive monuments mark a family that achieved the American dream and then lost it all, pretty much exactly as predicted. The mansion is a private home now, but the legend of the curse, the ghosts, and the family that danced right up to the edge of ruin, that lives on.